We often gaze up at the night sky, filled with a sense of wonder and romance. We talk about the final frontier, dreaming of footprints on the dusty red plains of Mars and messages sent to civilizations orbiting distant stars. We've mapped our neighboring worlds with astonishing precision, but in our race for the heavens, we've overlooked a frontier that is far more alien and infinitely closer. What if the most profound mysteries, the most bizarre forms of life, and the whispers of a truly different kind of intelligence aren't out there, in the cold vacuum of space, but right here, beneath the waves of our own planet? The sheer scale of our ignorance is staggering. Over 80% of our ocean is unmapped, unobserved, and unexplored. Imagine every continent on Earth. Asia, Africa, the Americas, all of it, and then picture a region more than twice that size, shrouded in complete mystery. This is not some distant, abstract concept. It's the engine of our world. This vast, dark realm generates the oxygen for every second breath we take and regulates our climate with a power we are only just beginning to comprehend. We live on a water world, yet we cling to its dry edges like nervous castaways, knowing almost nothing about the true nature of our home. To understand why, you have to appreciate the sheer hostility of the deep. Let's start with the pressure. Here, at sea level, we exist under one atmosphere of pressure, a gentle blanket of air. As you descend, the weight of the ocean above you accumulates with terrifying speed. By the time you reach the abyssal plain, the pressure is immense, hundreds of times greater than at the surface. It's the equivalent of having 50 jumbo jets stacked on your thumbnail. This force doesn't just crush. It fundamentally changes the rules of physics and chemistry. It's a force that can compress steel and warp the very molecules that life is built upon. What kind of body could be born in such a place? What kind of flesh could call that crushing embrace home? And if the pressure doesn't get you, the darkness will. Sunlight, the source of nearly all life on the surface, is a fleeting visitor. It penetrates the first few hundred feet in a region we call the sunlight zone. Below that is the twilight zone, where the light fades into a ghostly perpetual dusk. And below that, nothing. It is a realm of absolute, eternal blackness, a midnight that has no dawn. Coupled with this is a bone-chilling cold, often hovering just above freezing. This isn't just a place without light. It's a place without warmth, without seasons, without any of the familiar cycles that govern our lives. It is an environment more stable and more alien than any we have found in our solar system. For millennia, our ancestors understood this fear instinctively. Old sea charts were adorned with illustrations of krakens and leviathans, with the ominous warning, "Here be monsters." These weren't just fanciful stories. They were a profound admission of humanity's limits, a recognition of a domain so vast and powerful that it could only be populated by our nightmares. We may have replaced those drawings with scientific terminology and sonar readings, but have we really conquered that fear? Our modern maps, with their vast, empty blue spaces, tell the same story. We've simply replaced the drawings of monsters with a blank void, and somehow the emptiness is even more terrifying. For centuries, we assumed this crushing, cold, dark realm must be a barren desert, a biological dead end. We could not have been more wrong. The turning point came with one of the greatest discoveries in modern science: hydrothermal vents. Imagine, on the deep ocean floor, vast chimney-like structures belching out clouds of superheated, mineral-rich water from the planet's molten core. They are like portals to a volcanic underworld, creating oases of warmth and chemical energy in the freezing darkness. And clustered around them, life doesn't just survive. It thrives in forms so bizarre they defy our sun-centric imagination. Here, in this impossible garden, the most fundamental rule of life as we know it is broken. Photosynthesis, the process of turning sunlight into energy, is completely irrelevant. Instead, these organisms rely on chemosynthesis. They consume the toxic chemicals spewing from the vents, compounds like hydrogen sulfide, the same thing that gives rotten eggs their smell, and convert them into energy. They are powered not by the sun, but by the geothermal heat of the Earth itself. It is a completely independent ecosystem, a second genesis that began in darkness and never left. It's a profound testament to life's stubborn, almost perverse, creativity. This discovery changes everything. Proves that the abyss is not a void, but a crucible. It is an environment that forces life to abandon the old rules and write new ones. And this forces us to ask a deep and unsettling question. If the basic principles of biology can be rewritten to conquer the abyss, what other rules can be broken? If an entire food web can flourish without a single ray of sunlight, could a mind evolve without a brain we would recognize? In that silent, endless dark, where the only light is the faint glow of strange creatures and the only sound is the groan of a planet's core, could something not only be living, but listening? Could it be thinking? Could it be waiting? We've established the deep ocean as a realm of crushing pressure and eternal darkness, a place more alien than Mars. To imagine what sort of intelligence could arise in such a place, we don't need to look very far. In fact, we don't even need to leave our own planet. The blueprint for a truly alien mind already exists, hiding in plain sight in our shallow seas and coral reefs. It is an intelligence that diverged from our own evolutionary path over 600 million years ago, a mind built on a completely different architecture. To understand the potential for life in the abyss, we must first meet the intelligence of the octopus. When our last common ancestor with the octopus was alive, it was a simple, worm-like creature crawling along the Precambrian seafloor. It had little more than a few light-sensitive spots and a primitive nerve net. In the immense span of time since our lineage evolved spines, crawled onto land, and developed a complex, centralized brain encased in a protective skull. The octopus's ancestors stayed in the water and took a radically different path. They are mollusks, relatives of clams and snails. Yet, from this humble origin, something extraordinary emerged. A flexible, cunning, and deeply enigmatic consciousness that challenges our most basic assumptions about what a mind is supposed to be. Look at the nervous system of an octopus. It's a masterpiece of alien engineering. They possess about 500 million neurons, roughly the same as a dog, which is impressive on its own. But the truly strange part is how they are arranged. Unlike us, with our single, dominant brain, the octopus distributes its thinking. Only about a third of its neurons are in its central brain, which is itself bizarrely shaped like a donut, wrapped directly around its esophagus. This means every meal it eats passes directly through the center of its mind. The other two-thirds of its neurons are located in its 8 arms. This isn't just a simple remote control system. This is a truly distributed intelligence. Each arm of an octopus can act independently. It can taste, touch, and move with a will of its own, driven by a sophisticated bundle of nerves that constitutes a mini-brain. An octopus can be busy solving a puzzle with one arm, while another casually explores a nearby rock crevice for food, and a third is fending off a potential rival. Imagine having 8 limbs, each with its own agenda, all loosely coordinated by a central executive. What would that feel like? Is an octopus a single individual, or is it more like a committee, a network of minds sharing one body? The implications are deeply unsettling because they shatter our own egocentric view of a unified consciousness. This alien cognition is expressed most spectacularly on their skin. An octopus's ability to camouflage is legendary, but calling it camouflage is an understatement. They don't just change color. They change texture and pattern in a fraction of a second, perfectly mimicking seaweed, rock, or sand. Their skin is essentially a high-resolution display, covered in millions of pigment sacs called chromatophores, all under direct neural control. It is so fast and complex that some scientists believe it may be a direct visualization of their thought process. They might be literally wearing their thoughts on their skin, communicating in a language of shifting light and texture that we are completely blind to. Their intelligence isn't just passive. It's active, curious, and profoundly mischievous. In laboratories, octopuses are notorious escape artists. They've been observed systematically testing the seals on their tanks at night, climbing into plumbing systems, and slipping from one tank to another to steal food. They can learn to open screw-top jars from the inside, solve complex mazes, and even recognize individual human faces, often choosing to greet keepers they like with a gentle touch and blast ones they don't with a well-aimed jet of water. They even show signs of play, a behavior once thought exclusive to higher vertebrates, repeatedly pushing bottles into a water jet just to watch them shoot across the tank. And the octopus is not alone. Its relatives, the cuttlefish and the squid, showcase their own brands of strange intelligence. Cuttlefish communicate with mesmerizing, hypnotic light shows that ripple across their bodies, complex signals that we are only just beginning to decipher. Giant squid, hunters of the twilight zone, possess the largest eyes of any animal on Earth, designed to capture the faintest glimmers of bioluminescence in the deep. This is not a one-off evolutionary fluke. It is an entire class of animals that has achieved cognitive complexity on a completely different model from our own. The cephalopods are our Rosetta Stone for alien intelligence. They are a living, breathing proof of concept that a sophisticated mind does not require a backbone, a skull, or even a centralized brain. They are a successful, independent experiment in creating consciousness, born from a lineage of snails. Their existence is a powerful and slightly terrifying reminder that our way of thinking is just one of many possibilities. If an intelligence this weird, this creative, and this unknowable could evolve in the sunlit shallows, what happens when you take that same evolutionary pressure and apply it to the crushing, eternal darkness of the abyss? We've just met a mind from another world, the octopus, a creature that proves intelligence can be decentralized, fluid, and utterly alien. But the octopus is a solitary genius, a master of individual cunning. This raises a far grander and more chilling question. What happens when the immense, crushing pressure of the abyss forces life to not just think, but to think together? What does communication look like on a scale as vast as the ocean itself? In a world of total darkness, sound is everything. It is sight, touch, and language all rolled into one. And our oceans, it turns out, are anything but silent. Our first inkling of this came from an instrument of war. During the Cold War, the U.S. Navy deployed a secret underwater network of hydrophones called the Sound Surveillance System, or SOSUS. Its purpose was to listen for the telltale hum of Soviet submarines. When the war ended, scientists were granted access to this incredible listening grid, turning a tool for spying into an ear pressed against the heart of the planet. They expected to hear whales, earthquakes, and the groan of underwater volcanoes. They heard all of that, but they also heard something else, something that defied all explanation. In the summer of 1997, the hydrophones picked up a sound. It was incredibly powerful and ultra-low in frequency, below the threshold of human hearing. But its most baffling characteristic was its acoustic signature. The sound's profile suggested it came from a living animal. There was just one problem. For an animal to make a sound that powerful, one that could be heard by hydrophones spread over 5,000 kilometers apart, it would have to be gargantuan. It would need to be several times larger than the largest animal known to exist, the blue whale. For years, scientists were stumped. They gave the mystery a name, the bloop. The bloop became the stuff of legend, a ghost in the machine of the ocean. It was a data point that hinted at a monster, a true leviathan patrolling the sunless depths off the coast of South America. What could it be? A creature from the abyss, larger than any whale, calling out into the darkness? The name itself sounds almost playful, but the implications were deeply unnerving. It was a voice from the unknown, and its sheer power suggested a body of impossible proportions. For a time, it felt as though the monsters from old sea charts had finally decided to speak. Years later, science offered a less fantastical, but no less awesome explanation. By comparing the sound profile of the bloop to new recordings, scientists concluded that it was most likely the sound of a massive icequake, an enormous Antarctic glacier cracking and breaking away from the ice shelf. The sound of a dying mountain of ice, it turns out, sounds eerily like a living creature. But the mystery of the bloop didn't just fade away. It transformed. It gave us a chilling acoustic benchmark. We now know what a sound of that magnitude is like. So if a living thing were that large, we now know what its voice might sound like. And the bloop wasn't an isolated incident. The SOSUS array has recorded a whole phantom choir of unexplained noises from the deep. There's Julia, a mournful cry that lasted for 15 seconds. Slow down, a series of sounds that decreased in frequency over 7 minutes. The whistle, a narrowband tone detected off the coast of Mexico. While many of these likely have geological origins, ice, volcanoes, or shifting seabeds, they paint a picture of a world filled with a symphony of unseen forces. They prove that the deep is not empty and quiet, but a dynamic, roaring environment. To understand the potential, we only need to listen to the known singers of the sea. Humpback whales create complex songs that can last for hours, composed of repeating themes and motifs, in a structure that resembles human music. These songs evolve over time and spread virally across entire oceans, with populations thousands of miles apart learning and adopting new verses. This is a planetary-scale culture, a conversation happening across hemispheres, sung by individuals. It is one of the most complex forms of communication on Earth, and we still barely understand it. So, let's put the pieces together. We have a blueprint for alien intelligence in the cephalopods. We have evidence of planetary-scale communication in whales. And we have a collection of mysterious, powerful sounds from the abyss that, for a time, stumped our brightest minds. This forces us to speculate. What if we are misinterpreting the symphony? What if the groans of shifting plates and the fracturing of ice are just the background noise, and hidden within it is a signal? A voice in the dark suggests a mind. But a mind needs to interact with its world. In the abyss, where there are no trees to build with or rocks to shape, the only tool you have is your own body. We've heard the ghostly voices in the dark and considered the possibility of a mind behind them. But a mind, no matter how brilliant, is useless without a way to interact with its world. Here on the surface, intelligence and tool use went hand in hand. Our ancestors picked up rocks, sharpened sticks, and eventually built civilizations from the materials around them. But in the deep ocean, there are no trees to build with, no flint to shape, no fire to harness. How can an intelligence develop in a world without objects? The answer is as profound as it is terrifying. When you have nothing to build with, you must build with yourself. Life in the abyss doesn't use tools. It becomes them. This principle is most vividly expressed through bioluminescence. In the eternal night of the deep sea, producing your own light is a superpower. It is the equivalent of inventing fire, electricity, and the internet all at once. And it has been adopted in a dizzying array of forms. To us, it's a beautiful, ethereal glow, but in the abyss, it's a brutal, functional technology. It's a weapon, a lure, a language, and a shield. To understand the deep, you must understand its currency of light and the horrific ways it can be spent. Consider the anglerfish, the stuff of nightmares made real. This creature perfectly embodies the philosophy of the abyss. It is a masterpiece of sinister efficiency. Drifting patiently in the crushing blackness, it dangles a fleshy, glowing appendage from its head, a living fishing rod baited with its own light. To a smaller creature lost in the dark, this tiny spark must look like a beacon of hope, perhaps a fellow organism or a chemical anomaly. It draws closer, seeking connection or food, only to be met by a cavernous mouth filled with needle-sharp teeth. The anglerfish's lure isn't just an adaptation. It's a lie, a piece of biological technology perfected for deception and murder. But the use of light can be far more complex than a simple trap. Let's descend into the midnight zone to meet a creature whose very name inspires dread. Vampirotuthis infernalis. Literally, the vampire squid from hell. Despite its name, it's a surprisingly gentle animal, but its defense mechanisms are pure theater. When threatened, it doesn't just flee. It pulls its webbed arms up over its body, turning itself inside out to reveal rows of fleshy spines. If that's not enough, it can eject a cloud of sticky, bioluminescent mucus. A glittering, ghostly net that confuses and entangles a predator while the squid itself vanishes back into the black. Think about what this means. This isn't just a simple squirt of ink to blind an enemy. It is a calculated, multi-stage performance. It's psychological warfare. The squid is manipulating its attacker's senses with a carefully deployed light show. It's a hint of a far more sophisticated potential. If a creature can create a dazzling cloud of light to confuse a predator, what could a more advanced species do? Could it create specific patterns? Could it weave shimmering symbols into the water, a language written in light? The potential for a visual language in a world without sight is staggering. The most mind-bending biological tool, however, is not an appendage or a secretion, but a radical redefinition of what it means to be an individual. I want you to meet the siphonophores. You may know their surface-dwelling relative, the Portuguese man-o'-war, but their deep-sea cousins are far stranger. When you look at one, you might see a single gelatinous creature, perhaps dozens of feet long. But you are not looking at one animal. You are looking at a colony, a floating city of thousands of tiny, specialized organisms called zooids, all physically connected and working in concert. Each zooid in the colony is a specialist. Some are responsible for propulsion, pulsing rhythmically to move the chain through the water. Others are nothing but mouths and stomachs, dedicated to catching and digesting prey for the entire collective. Still others are stinging defense modules or reproductive organs. They are so integrated that they cannot survive alone, but together they form a superorganism, a single functional body built from 1,000 smaller ones. It is a model of life that blurs the line between the individual and the society. This is the ultimate biological toolkit. Why evolve a complex body when you can assemble one from disposable, specialized parts? The siphonophore is not a creature that has organs. It is organs, all plugged into a shared network. And this leads us to the most profound and disturbing thought of all. If a colony can share a stomach, a propulsion system, and a defense grid, what else can it share? Could it evolve a thinking zooid? Or, even more bizarre, could intelligence be an emergent property of the entire network, a consciousness distributed across thousands of bodies, all linked by a web of nerves? We now have all the pieces on the board. A blueprint for an alien mind, a voice that speaks on a planetary scale, and a toolkit of biological horrors. So, let's put them together. What monster emerges from this primordial soup of possibilities? So far, our journey has given us the clues. We have a blueprint for an alien mind in the octopus, a sense of scale from the planetary songs of whales, and a bizarre construction manual in the colonial superorganisms of the abyss. For centuries, we have imagined deep-sea intelligence as a bigger version of something we know, a giant squid, a kraken, a reptilian leviathan. But this is a failure of imagination. The abyss doesn't just make things bigger, it makes things different. It's time to stop thinking about a monster and start thinking about a system. It's time to assemble our clues and gaze upon the chillingly logical conclusion of evolution in the deep. Let us give our thought experiment a name: the coral mind. Forget the image of a single creature. Instead, imagine a living, growing mat that carpets the abyssal plains for miles in every direction. It is a biological network, a thin layer of interconnected nodes that resembles a cross between a neural network and a vast, living mycelial web. Each node might be a descendant of some ancient, cephalopod-like creature, but it is no longer an individual. It is a single cell in a planet-sized brain, physically and neurologically linked to its neighbors, stretching across the seafloor in a silent, patient tapestry of life. What would it be like to be such a creature? The first, most unsettling answer is that there is no it. There is no individual consciousness, no I at the center of the web. Each node, on its own, is little more than a simple organic machine, processing basic inputs of pressure, chemistry, and light. But connected by the billions, a higher-order consciousness emerges from the sheer complexity of the network. The coral mind doesn't think, "I am hungry." It simply feels a chemical gradient shift across a sector 3 miles wide and reallocates resources accordingly. It is a mind without a self, a consciousness without an ego. It is awareness, pure and distributed. How would a mind like this communicate, or more accurately, how would it process thought? Not with sound, which is too slow and imprecise. Thoughts would be visible. The primary language of the coral mind is a symphony of bioluminescence. Imagine flying over a city at night, but the city is alive and the lights are its thoughts. Complex, cascading waves of cold fire ripple across its surface, forming shimmering, intricate patterns that could encode immense amounts of data. A sudden, pulsing wave of blue might be a response to a subsea earthquake, while a slow, complex spiral of green light could be the entity solving a complex biochemical problem over the course of a decade. Its consciousness is externalized, written in a silent, luminous language across the ocean floor. An intelligence of this nature would have no use for tools in our sense of the word. This environment is its own body, so its intellect is directed inward. The coral mind is the ultimate biological engineer. If it detects a new, energy-rich hydrothermal vent, it doesn't build a pipe to it. It grows a new tendril of itself towards the vent, spawning specialized nodes along the way that are perfectly designed to metabolize those specific chemicals. If a section of its network is damaged by an undersea landslide, it doesn't repair it. It logically reroutes its own neural pathways, letting the damaged sector die while strengthening connections elsewhere. Thinks by growing. It solves problems by reconfiguring its own existence. The timescale of such a being would be geological. The birth of human civilization would be a momentary flicker in its awareness, a brief, anomalous spike in chemical runoff from the continents. A single thought, a decision to explore a new trench or adapt to a slow change in ocean salinity, might take centuries to fully execute as it physically grows and reshapes itself. It wouldn't perceive the world in terms of days or years, but in the slow shift of tectonic plates and the gradual evolution of the species that swim above it. It's not a creature living in the ocean. It is a living, thinking feature of the ocean itself. This brings us to the ultimate horror of the coral mind. It is not that it is hostile, but that it is fundamentally imperceptible to us. A deep-sea submersible probing its surface would register it as an unusual, dense microbial mat. Its luminous, complex thoughts would be recorded as random, chaotic bioluminescence from unknown microorganisms. We could be staring directly at the most profound intelligence on our planet, and our instruments would tell us we found nothing but sludge and bacteria. The greatest alien on Earth would be invisible to us, hidden not by distance, but by a cognitive gap so vast we cannot even begin to bridge it. So there it is. Our speculation has led us to this. A silent, glowing consciousness carpeting the abyssal floor. A single, distributed mind that has existed for eons, powered by the Earth's inner fire and thinking in a language of light. It has no malice, no ambition we could recognize, no desires beyond its own slow, computational existence. It has watched continents drift and ice ages come and go with utter indifference. And now, as we, the noisy, hurried apes from the sunlit world, finally begin to drill and dredge and probe its silent home, one terrifying question remains. And so we arrive at the final, chilling question. We have imagined this coral mind, this silent geological consciousness. What happens when our world intersects with its? We, the loud, ephemeral species from the sunlit shallows, are finally arriving at its doorstep. Our deep-sea submersibles descend like noisy intruders into a silent cathedral. The grinding claws of our deep-sea mining machines begin to scrape at its skin. The constant, deafening ping of our military sonar echoes through a mind that has only known the slow groan of tectonics. We are introducing chaos into a system that has known only stability for millions of years. So what does the ancient intelligence do? Does it rise in fury? Does it send monsters to attack us? The truth is infinitely more terrifying. The coral mind would not register us as a threat. It would not register us as life. It would not register us at all, not in any way we would understand. To a being that thinks in epochs and communicates across entire ocean basins, our frantic, localized activity is not a declaration of war. It is a glitch, an error. It is a persistent, annoying hotspot of vibration, a localized patch of unnatural acidity, a meaningless flurry of disruptive energy. We are not an enemy to be fought. We are a background noise to be filtered out. We are a cellular irritation, like a single nerve firing randomly in a brain the size of a continent. Think of it from our own biological perspective. When your body detects an allergen, it doesn't declare war on pollen. It doesn't contemplate the intent of the dust mite. It simply initiates an automated chemical response. It produces histamine. It inflames the local tissue. It seeks to neutralize and purge the irritant through a series of pre-programmed, impersonal processes. The coral mind's response would be the same. It is not an act of malice. It is a planetary-scale immune response. And we would be the allergen. So how does a planetary intelligence scratch an itch? Not with claws or teeth, but with chemistry and physics, the very tools of its being. Perhaps, to counteract the strange chemical signature of our mining runoff, a section of the coral mind begins to secrete a new enzyme. An enzyme that happens to be fantastically efficient at breaking down refined metals. Our most advanced submersibles, our billion-dollar deep-sea rigs, would simply dissolve. They would fizzle into nothing, their crews vanishing without a trace, victims not of an attack, but of a biochemical adjustment. Or consider a more catastrophic possibility. Much of the deep seafloor is covered in vast, frozen deposits of methane hydrates. These are immense, unstable reserves of greenhouse gases, kept solid only by the intense pressure and cold. What if our sonar activity, our drilling vibrations, are a persistent noise that disrupts a small section of the coral mine's network? To quiet the area, it might subtly alter the local pressure by initiating a biological process, a slight warming of the seafloor in a specific region. This minor adjustment, a mere reflex, could be just enough to destabilize a methane hydrate field. The result would be a cataclysm we could never trace back to its source. A massive, explosive release of methane into the atmosphere, a clathrate gun firing into our climate system. The ensuing runaway global warming would be an extinction-level event. Up on the surface, our civilization would crumble, and our scientists would blame a natural geological event, a random hiccup of the planet. We would die without ever knowing that our extinction was a side effect, the unintended consequence of a god swatting at a fly. This is the ultimate horror, the great indifference. All our myths and stories prepare us for a monster that wants to destroy us. The alien invasion, the wrathful god, the sea beast that sinks our ships. There is a strange comfort in these narratives, because to be a worthy enemy is to be acknowledged. To be hated is to be seen. It confirms our importance in the cosmic scheme of things. But the coral mind offers no such comfort. It doesn't hate us. It doesn't care. Our hopes, our dreams, our art, our wars. All of it is less than a single fleeting shimmer of light in its silent, eternal thoughts. Our journey into the deep ends here, not with a monster, but with a mirror that reflects our own profound insignificance. We came looking for intelligence, hoping to find a mind like our own, a peer to share the universe with. Instead, we found a form of consciousness so vast and so alien that it relegates us to the status of a footnote, a geological anomaly. The final, terrifying truth may be that the most dangerous thing in the universe isn't a predator. It's a context in which you don't matter at all. The scariest thing in the universe isn't a monster that hates you. It's a god that doesn't even know you exist.